All right, thanks very much, Tim. So Tim's just sort of set you up with where we are in terms of energy markets. I'm going to give you a little bit of a peek into the future, so a little bit of an update really about new technologies and some of the work we've been doing around energy policy, which again I think then it picks up on some of the themes that we heard this morning, and I think it sets up the next two speakers quite nicely as well. So, how could you, 35–40% of you have probably got renewable energy in some form or another in your business now. How do we add value to that? New technologies. Andrea in here talking about exploring new markets in her Future of Food 2040 report. You've got a copy of all that in your packs. Electric vehicles mentioned, because we've seen domestic cars, we've seen this moving now into the bus and truck sector, and it's going to be very much the non-road vehicle, agricultural vehicles next. So clearly there'll be opportunities to add value through being able to power your own vehicles from on-site generated energy. And then over on the right, clearly, many of you are aware, we've been writing about this for a little while, the coming up market for energy storage, whether it's at large scale like that, so that's providing services to the local electricity grid, or whether it's smaller batteries, which are an integral part of how you manage energy in your own business. Here's a few stats. I'm not going to run through all of them. Some of this is familiar to you anyway, but in terms of how the UK has been responding to the old European Renewable Energy Directive, we're behind the curve of some of our major competitors. We're supposed to get to 15% renewable energy in all forms, that's electricity and its heating and its energy used in transport, 15% by next year, and we're currently 10.5% maybe we're going to get up to about 11 or 12. We're going to be underperforming compared with many of our major European competitors. But, we're a country dominated by agricultural land, and we can use that land area and our buildings as platforms for harnessing these renewable natural energy flows. And perhaps in the future, moving to this idea of getting our sector to net zero, creating negative greenhouse gas emissions by coupling bioenergy to ways of putting that carbon out of circulation and beyond reach. And it's bioenergy, wind power, solar, and now solar bringing the battery technology along in its wake, which have been the main drivers of all of this. I think these figures speak for themselves. Look, an estimated 19,000 agricultural solar rooftops out there across the UK. And last point, picking up on a little bit of what Tim was saying earlier, we're doing a good job in terms, as a nation, of decarbonising electricity production. We're already up to about 31% renewable electricity. There's the breakdown. Again, it's bioenergy, wind, and then solar dominating that. And coal is pretty much falling off the system now. It was only 5% of electricity generation last year, and it'll probably even less this year coming. So we heard from this man this morning. He is saying, or part of his message is about turbulence that's coming to the agricultural sector as a result of Brexit. How are we going to make up for the loss of our basic farm payments with the reform of agricultural policy and the development of a new UK domestic agricultural policy? Well, the Mutual survey, which was carried out in November, agrees with other stuff that's coming from the Farm Business Survey and so on. About 60% of farmers have already diversified, and there's a high level of satisfaction with generating this diversification income. We're doing it for a variety of reasons. In some cases it is to give us an extra income stream for the farm. In other cases, it's about creating opportunities for other family members who want to split off from the main business. But renewable energy is up there as one of the most significant of the various diversification opportunities on offer. So clearly, we're looking to the Secretary of State to support us as we become rather more diverse businesses in the future. And just to remind you that climate change, you heard it again this morning, it's not off the agenda, it's not flavour of the month, it's with us for the long term. Climate change, alongside energy security concerns and food security concerns, are driving agricultural policy. The Greenhouse Gas Action Plan is where we were with the previous Labour government of 2005 to 10, some 10 years ago, and this was about showing that we're a responsible industry. We're prepared to do something to tackle climate change because we're right there in the front line, experiencing and having to adapt to climate change pretty much on a daily basis. My colleague Keris has been working at international level, attending some of these international climate talks, representing the World Farmers Organization Climate Working Group. And this is important because it is ultimately international policy. Things like the 2015 Paris Agreement, an international agreement to manage greenhouse gas emissions, except just last year we heard the experts in the Intergovernmental Panel saying it's not good enough to just go to stabilising global temperature rise at 2 degrees. We're going to have to go further and manage it at perhaps try to limit those temperature rises to 1.5 degrees. So we're now seeing the UK government seeking advice from the Committee on Climate Change on whether we can get our economy overall to net zero greenhouse gas emissions. And at the beginning of this year, our response to that was to say, well, we're going to have to also raise our game. If agriculture is going to have a part in taking the whole UK economy to net zero, we will set ourselves an aspiration to rebalance our greenhouse gas emissions over the next 20 years. Just a little bit, I don't expect you to read all of this, but this just illustrates some of the recent policy work that we've been doing. So on NFU Online, you can read about many of these things coming through, changes in government policy or opportunities where we have to respond to government consultations. We put a pretty robust one in last summer, responding to the proposal to end the feed-in tariff scheme, which has brought so much small-scale generation into being across the country. And at the moment, a little bit of a policy gap in terms of what is going to replace that and support small-scale generation. We also were expressing our concern about the next part of the picture, how we decarbonise heating. There will be an impact of phasing out high carbon fuels, particularly where we've got relatively sensitive crop processing, which we will need time to adapt as we change technology. So bottom message there is that it's clean energy production is a key farm diversification activity, but we're moving now into an era of subsidy free. We no longer require these renewable energy incentive payments, but things like routes to market and tax policy is going to be a lot more important in the future. And this, again, to pick up on perhaps what Tim was saying about the importance of gas now in the economy and the importance of decarbonising heating. There may be a significant business opportunity coming up to displace natural gas out of the gas network and replace it with biomethane. Biomethane is probably the most readily available technology to decarbonise the gas network. So there is a future for anaerobic digestion, probably more consistent with the bottom picture, the large-scale opportunities, rather than what we've been trying to encourage as well. If only DEFRA would give us additional reward for environmental benefits delivered, small-scale on-farm AD. Electrification of vehicles. Hands up anyone who's come here in an electric car. Good, we've got a couple of hands. Well, Stuart Roberts is with you. Stuart has a Nissan Leaf. We've got 22 kilowatt charge points at NFU headquarters now because this is clearly the future direction of travel. Some of you may have been aware that Land Rover were experimenting with the Defender and putting out some experimental vehicles with electric drivetrains in. But now, that was 5 years ago. Today, we're starting to see electric and hybrid options across the whole of the Land Rover range because clearly that is the future. Honda are going to close their factory. Is it because of Brexit? Well, they're being really diplomatic. They're saying it is because of the demise of diesel and the need now to completely re-engineer and the whole car industry moving in the direction of electric. And I showed you a picture of the Fendt prototype tractor on the first slide, which we understand is in some sort of extended field trials in Germany at the moment, but it's not the only announcement that we've seen. So we've seen telehandlers, and then this was in December from a Swiss consortium, something rather similar scale and size to the Fendt tractor. So this technology is coming down the road. Perhaps it will be within our grasp within the next 5 years. So overall, in my concluding slide, we are making progress. We can become energy farmers. That first picture is what we were doing. We were putting solar onto our farm buildings, but now We're starting to embrace energy storage as a way of adding value. That's a 1 megawatt shipping container sized storage unit. And we're now starting to see these applications. If we're going to be involved in charging electric vehicles on farm, will the grid be able to take it? Can we look at opportunities coming from vehicle to grid, so-called vehicle to grid technology, or V2G? Which enables a two-way flow where the vehicles may support the grid as well as just taking power from the grid. The main point, clearly, members, is that you will need professional advice to help navigate your way through some of this stuff. And our asks of government are going to be around things like infrastructure from now on. We need the energy infrastructure, we need the digital infrastructure if we're going to be able to embrace these new technologies. Thank you very much. And we have, I believe, a couple of videos showing case studies of members who are already starting to move in this direction, adding value to their on-farm self-generation. One of them actually has invented or developed an electric quad bike.
So this is an EcoCharger. This is the Eliminator 2. This bike is equal or a plus performance of about a 700cc quad bike. And the reason we develop them is because we feel that normal quad bikes are very inefficient doing short duration journeys, running on average 9 to 15 miles to the gallon. Our farmers are doing about 6 miles a day, and the quad bike can easily achieve this with the range and the performance that we're giving it. The bike is typically used for sheep duties, feeding horses, gathering and just out of the general farm duties. It has a good turn of speed, as I'm just about to demonstrate. What attracts people to EcoCharger is the fact that you don't need to carry fuel. We have them on the islands in Scotland, Mull, Fair Isle, and some very rugged locations that have renewable energy. There's lots of things coming into agriculture. It could be autonomous vehicles weeding fields. It could be anything from electric tractors. And technology is a way of engaging younger people within agriculture as well. So this is the Renewable hub. So we have two systems here that are on grid. And if you look up towards the end of the building here, we have the off-grid system. So the inverters cascade in from 3 kilowatts up to 12 kilowatts of energy. And what this does, this enables us to do plasma cutting, welding, charging the bikes, running the chainsaws to process the timber to heat the factory. In some points of the year, we're obviously 120% efficient. So we're looking towards storing some power with a view to becoming, an off-grid system.
So that was Fred in North Devon, and this is Andy down in Hampshire.
I've been wanting to put solar panels on the farm for probably 20 or 30 years, but it's only with the feed-in tariffs that it became a viable possibility. There are two very, very good reasons for installing solar panels and also looking at batteries. Firstly, certainly as far as the solar panels are concerned at the moment, you can make money. And secondly, of course, we're cutting greenhouse gases with the IPCC report out. It's ever more important that farmers engage with this agenda. Since the solar PV has gone in, we've halved the farm electricity bill, and we export now more electricity than we consume. For 2 or 3 months in the summer, we are quite often off-grid for periods of 24 hours or 48 hours. This is in a period when the electricity prices have gone up by 30-odd%. So we have an income of £8,000 from the feed-in tariff. We've saved ourselves £1,000 off our electricity bill, and there's one other thing that's going on is we've got an electric car and we're getting free transport to the value of about £1,000 from that. Battery prices have started coming down to the point where they're nearly or possibly viable depending on your circumstances. So we now have some batteries installed to take advantage of this free electricity. Things like batteries and electric cars can add value to the electricity that's being produced. You've got a win-win situation.
I like that, don't you? A win-win situation.